Hey y'all, I'm Rain and this is Fennec Fables, where we delve into some fun prompts for adding depth to your TTRPG games, to give you some interesting ideas to think about as you play or prepare. This video is going to be a bit different, but also a bit familiar as I've technically brought up this topic before, which should be here on the screen now. But as it was my first real try at making videos, I'm now looking back at it and wishing I'd gone at it just a little differently. It's still a fun video and I like it, but I'm going to take what I tried to say there and elucidate on it just a little bit. That, and I'm still cringing at all the times I said imagine. If you want to play a speed round to hydrate yourself, drink a glass of water every time I say the word imagine in that video, and you should be topped off for the rest of the day. And man, I didn't realize when I recorded just how jarring my left hand could be. Thanks for toughing it out, and thanks to my wonderful artist Cruz for helping me get that back under control. Yikes. It's still worth a listen, but I think it can be a bit better now that I'm more confident in how to handle these discussions and make it far more helpful than the ramble I ended up going on. Anyways, that little explanation and preamble out of the way, let's get to it. Now, I don't know about everyone, but in a lot of the games I've played in, the days are clear skies and sunny, leading into nights with clear skies and full moons, and then going on repeat again and again and again. Now, this isn't to say it's a bad thing in the slightest, as who doesn't love a nice sunny day or a pleasant evening under the stars, but it can become rather monotonous when you're playing in a long-form game. It can begin to bleed together, days and nights all being the same, with the only real differences being which beast or baddie you're contending with in that particular stretch. I'd like to propose that even if it's sparse, that you swap things up a bit. Now, if you're someone that isn't interested in tracking the entire weather systems of your games, and man, I do not blame you. I've done it and it can be its own form of tedious. Just having it alter slightly in your descriptions to being overcast or keeping a small note of whatever moon phase your game in can add a whole lot of depth and make it feel a lot more alive and unique. So if you're willing for just a little bit of extra tracking on a notepad, which can be done with your other prep, and at the moment if you have those fun weather dice, your world can become a bit more alive and a little more chaotic, though be ready for a random chance of tornado, which, hey, that can be fun. But anyways, it can open up not just only some new backdrops to your games, but moments in which you can encourage amazing challenges, benefits, and quite possibly entire missions for them to contend with just a little bit of weather. Let's get into the way of just having to account for the weather will adjust how the players approach scenarios in your game. Let me propose one to you. Your party has rested for the night, and the next morning has come. You can hear the rain pelting onto the roof as you dress. As you gather your packs, you can hear the crack of thunder outside, but you cannot put off your journey another day. Your horse is bridled, and your wagon is ready for the journey. Your companions crowd under the bonnet cover, and thankfully, the weatherproofing is held. As you clamber into the driver's seat, you are hit by the fierce rain that pelts you from above and below, the strength of which it comes down. The mud is thick, and your vision is limited. You know where you need to go. How do you wish to proceed? With just the inclusion of some heavy rain, you've now turned what would have been just another travel sequence into now a challenge for how they will contend with some difficult conditions. What those conditions may be will vary by your game system and preference, of course, but for me, I would include difficulty being seen and seeing. Their travel may also be impeded depending on the type of road they may be traversing, or involving some checks from the players, and it may give them an opportunity to use things they have yet been able to really use in the game so far. Weather in games open up a lot of new things that the players can now account for and try to mitigate, or in some cases turn into a boon. Rain may cause obscurement for foes, but there are times when being harder to be seen is a boon, such as sneaking through that path you scouted days ago into that heavily guarded castle, letting you slip in without a fight, but also saving you costs of much needed spell slots, abilities, or tech charges. This can also apply to things like fog and snow, which may have their own difficulties purely by their nature. Post a rainy day or heavy snowfall, you may have the players concerned with how easy they may be tracked, like by that bounty hunter that corrupt lord sent after them a while back, that they aren't quite sure if they slipped off their tracks or not. Or give them clues, like when they woke up this morning and found there were some distinct marks of boot prints in the snow around camp. Or in another case, may have the lead to some perceptive players hearing that crunch instead, and now instead of being surprised, they have that moment to prepare right before that blade punches through the wall of their tents. Strong winds can also come into play for things as bare bones as speeding up naval travel if favorable, or it can become as involved as altering the difficulty of ranged fire, helping or hindering the party in their goals. Here's a scenario, for example. Your player's party has been marooned on this planet for ages. They've been able to fashion the scraps of the crashed vessel into a beacon, but the signal is weak. They need to climb high in the mountains, trying to make it to the peak before nightfall, or be forced to set up camp on the side of it. The wind buffeting them harshly and whipping the meager scraps of cloth they've salvaged from the wreckage to turn into coats. 2 of them are carrying this hunk of metal, and the others are carrying supplies and keeping watch. They've had run-ins with the locals, and they are not to be pleased with this group. Your rear player is unlucky in their resolution mechanic and do not hear them coming, but the wind that has been terrorizing them all through their time here is a savior instead, as it pushes the arrow fired off away from its mark. They have company behind them, and they're so close to the top, how will they proceed? They have the upper hand now, with the distance and the wind aiding them, but they will have to get creative in how they handle this. Do they risk getting in close to contend with them, but risk leaving the device alone? Do they try to have the others forward on ahead while they stay behind? The scenario is now that much more involved and has another factor to their decisions because of this strong wind. You can also implement these ideas into scenarios as not just field effects of sorts, but as things that may come up at certain intervals for additional dangers. In a storm, you may have the lair action, for example, to target whomever has a certain criteria, whether that's the closest to a specific spot, wearing the most metal, or perhaps just a die roll. All of a sudden, the lash of lightning might come down to strike them, which makes for quite the surprising moment in the right kind of fight. Similar can be said for things like ice falling in a heavily frozen wood, either impaling or crashing down on an unsuspecting player, or enemy that puts themselves in the wrong spot. I'm being very broad, as if I tried to mention all the forms of weather and phenomena that you could introduce into this video, it would begin to sound a lot like Bubba listing shrimp, and that is not why you're here, though now that I'm thinking about it, it's making me a little hungry for shrimp. Never mind, back to the video. There is of course another thing that I'm very excited about, which is there are often abilities such as spells or tech that may never get the time to shine to its fullest potential because of how niche or situational their abilities may be. One of the first that comes to mind is a spell called Call Lightning. It's a very fun and flavorful spell, and has a cool additional effect when it's already in fact storming. Instead of creating your own localized storm, you can instead gain partial control of one that is already there, and you're able to focus it. Additionally, the damage of the spell increases because of this unique moment. How cool is that? Your caster gets to warp the world's power to their own benefit, and in this moment gets to feel all that more powerful and rewarded for taking this particular spell. This can come up in other spells, such as those that manipulate water, create ice and a heavy flood, or downpour. There are a lot of these types of spells. That player that has been waiting for a moment to create a wave may be rewarded with a little extra oomph if you feel the moment warrants it, or perhaps your enemy has been waiting for this exact moment to enact their plan as the storm charges up their automatons and gives them static discharge on their metallic bodies, or they just wanted to have a cool moment to send a wave and wipe out all your players. Lightning coming down in stronger storms, water or ice already being present giving more strength to those elements, harsh winds powering a concussive blast. There are so many opportunities to empower existing effects in the moment if that is the style of game master that you are. More so if your game also features tech or more modern additions. There is of course the last thing I really wanted to bring up in all this. I've discussed whether breaking up the monotony, how it can give you new ways for players to receive information and to contend with as part of a challenge, or even how it may be a boon or a hindrance all on its own. But what about it being the key issue itself? In the games I've run for the store I work at, there used to be this setup that I enjoyed quite a bit that I called the Flash Flood. The players were in a canyon having a drink at the local watering hole, which they didn't realize just how apt that was about to become. It was raining gently, the first in a while as the locals were called, and everyone was in high spirits. But then they heard this loud cacophonous sound begin, like the cracking of a tree, and then a roar. 2 of the players realized in time and rushed everyone out as fast as they could, just in time to see this wave of water rushing towards them in this narrow canyon. The dam that had held the local reservoir broke, and everything was rushing their way. They clambered up quickly to the roof, and the wave that took out this building was immense, and the scenario began. Everybody was on top of roofs, the bits of flotsam swirling as they spun and bounced off walls, rocking heavily. The player's new goal? Save as many of these people as they could from the harsh currents and prevent them from getting smashed, either by the debris running them into the wall or getting pinned between the 2 roofs that were spinning. It was a challenge they had never contended with before, and the unstable footing, rotating platforms, and risk of danger gave them new things that they had to approach from a different angle. Relying on friends and strangers alike to hold onto ropes became their plan, as several jumped into the water to be reeled back in. They did save quite a few that day, and they felt like heroes as they dragged who they could out of the water. I've had severe weather conditions come in as a challenge all on their own in past games, and I recommend them to you as well. Having a tornado whipping through a settled area, tearing up debris and flinging it about as your players search trying to secure scared folks in basements and storm cellars, lightning striking intermittently, upping the tension moment by moment, these create dramatic moments that players live for. If you really want to give your players something new, a forest or brush fire was also an extreme challenge, and it rewarded a player that I knew happened to take a very situational ability that allowed them to create rain, which let them feel like they got one over on me. I had plans for it to grow every round, and they would have had to find ways to narrow its damage as best they could, as it encroached not only on humanoid populated areas, but also as it drastically affected the local wildlife. It also was a great way to set up the Revenant coming back to hunt down the one that started the fire at all, but that's a chat for a video about villains with a point. Overall, these are the sort of ideas that I think you'd all enjoy in your games, not just as a gimmick or a one-off, which you can totally do, but as a way of deepening the world and the opportunities that you as the game master provide and opportunities that the players have to explore. I know that I enjoy using these things in my games, and I think that you would also like trying them yourselves. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, listening, and hopefully enjoying. If you have any of your own experiences with fun scenarios involving odd weather, I'd love for you to share them in the comments so that we can all check them out and maybe even use them in our own games as inspiration. If not, you can always drop in the comments with your favorite cold weather drink. Mine tends to end up being peppermint tea. You can, a like, a share, especially a subscribe, really helps as I work on getting these videos out. And if you enjoy answering TTRPG prompts or questions, please join me on Twitter or Blue Sky where I post daily. It's going to be linked in the main channel page. And who knows, your responses may be part of a future video. Thanks again, y'all, and I hope that these videos were helpful to you and help you tell better tales. Bye!